PEGI 18.
Hello, and welcome to today's Nintendo Direct. There is a long lineup today, so let's bring it directly to you. History before Nintendo made video games. In 1889, Nintendo, created in Kyoto, Japan, and was founded by Fusajiro Yamauchi. At this time it was called Yamauchi Nintendo. The word Nintendo was believed to be translated to leave luck to heaven, though this was never confirmed by Yamauchi himself. At this time, Nintendo was a card company, creating cards for the Japanese card game Hanafuda. He handcrafted the cards himself and used assistants to help mass produce the cards. Skip over to 1902 and he had created Western playing cards, which were only created for export, but they found interest all over Japan. This was a big boost for the company. Head over to 1952 and Nintendo's identity had changed. He had changed, as the company was given to his son-in-law, Hiroshi Yamauchi. Only a year later, they changed their name to Nintendo Playing Card Company Limited. This went on for 12 years though. In this time, they had created Walt Disney-style playing cards and other types until 1963, when they started creating games as well. They expanded creating toys such as Disney's baseball board and Ultra Hand. At this time though, they steered away from the card making scene, as in the 1970s, they had created electronic toys, which was the first in the market for Japan, as in 1975, in tandem with Mitsubishi Electronics, they had created the first video game system using only an electric video player. They had used this to make two games, TV Game 15 and TV Game 6, which oddly enough both look similar to Pong, the difference being the level it is played on. This is the one last leap into their trek into the modern gaming scene. First off, the Game & Watch. In 1980, Nintendo created their first portable console in their new subsidiary, Nintendo of America. During this time though, Shigeru Miyamoto had a concept in mind for an arcade game, Donkey Kong, surrounding a character called Jumpman who was a carpenter sent out to save his girlfriend, Pauline. Jumpman's name was changed in honor of their landlord, Mario Segale, which is the Mario we know now. To innovate from their previous console, they attempted something new. In 1985, the Nintendo Entertainment System, also known as the NES and the Famicom in Japan, their goal was to create a replication of arcade consoles that was able to be played on a system at home. The controller created is a standard still used in the modern video game scene, the D-pad, a four-directional control scheme for which when games were only two-dimensional. Nintendo revitalized the gaming market. Before the crash in 1985, Atari created a game based around the Steven Spielberg movie, E.T. The movie game was, and still is, to be stated as one of the worst video games ever created, and almost caused the video game market to crash until Nintendo released the NES, an 8-bit console, with their launch title Duck Hunt and Super Mario Bros. Now let us skip to 1989 with their second system, the Game Boy. Similar to the NES, however with games on a smaller scale, such as one of the best-selling games of all time, Tetris. How they innovated compared to the Game & Watch and the NES though, similar to the Game & Watch, it is a portable system. However, instead of one game per system, they learnt from their previous generation, and allowed bigger scale worlds, however in the palm of their hands. One of the biggest examples from this is being the Pokemon franchise, which is, and still is, one of the highest selling franchises of all time. This accelerated the sales for the console and showed there was a market for portable systems. In 1992, the Super Nintendo Entertainment System was released, shortened to the SNES, which upgraded the console from 8-bit to 16-bit, allowing for bigger scale games compared to the NES, which only had shorter scaled games. This, similar to the NES in design only, games that used to be simple had a more complex development cycle. With the use of the FX chip, released later, allowed 3D games to be played on the system, which, not as complex as modern day, was still very impressive. Nintendo's generations haven't all been successes, however. In 1985, Nintendo released the Virtual Boy. The Virtual Boy was created to be an immersive 3D experience. However, their first bout with 3D was considered sickening, with complaints of dizziness and it being jarring to the user. The Virtual Boy only had 22 games released. Due to the low sales, copies of these games are considered few and far between. They learnt with the next console generation, the Nintendo 64. Released in 1997, this revolutionized modern 3D level design and brought 3D gaming into the mainstream. How this innovated from their previous generation is adding the third dimension. The Nintendo 64 introduced an analog stick for easier movement in the newly introduced 3D gameplay. The game Mario 64 has helped with modern 3D game design, and the analog stick has been a staple of the medium since its inception. Around this time, Nintendo created their third portable system, a second variation of the Game Boy, the Game Boy Color. This ported games from the original system. However, unlike the original, and as the name suggests, they added color. Re-releases for this system was common, with 576 of the original Game Boy games compatible with the system. The Game Boy Color was able to thrive, being a straight upgrade from the previous iteration. In 2001, they released their next generation, the Nintendo GameCube. Firmly dubbed as the lunchbox at the time, the console was slated for being too kid-friendly. However, the console remains as the Nintendo's most standard controller to date, and remains the most popular choice for the hit franchise, Super Smash Bros., as it is used competitively around the world. The console itself was more of an extension of the Nintendo 64, as to innovate, similar to the NES to the SNES, was more of a straight upgrade of the N64. Allowing for bigger worlds and allowing games to be more detailed. Around this time, the Game Boy Advance came into circulation. A lot like its predecessor, it's an upgrade of the original Game Boy. Instead of playing games of the size of the NES on the go, it played games of SNES quality on the go, and allowed bigger worlds and bigger games. Around this time, Yamauchi retired from presidency, and Satoru Iwata took his place. Satoru Iwata was huge for the company, not just being a boss, but being described as a friend. A lot of how Nintendo operates nowadays all comes from his ideas and his philosophies, including work ethics, allowing developers more time to socialize, to have more breaks so the game isn't rushed, and having lunch to allow ideas to naturally come through conversation. And he helped to make sure the company innovated. In 2004, they revealed the DS, with immediate success. The idea of the two screens introduced with the DS, the dual screen, was an idea implemented from the Game & Watch days. It was more powerful than the Game Boy games, and allowed 3D games to be played on the system portably. With use of the Game Boy Advance cartridges in the system, it didn't alienate any Game Boy owners, and it was an incentive to buy the system. In 2006, it was a busy year for Nintendo, as the Wii was introduced. This went on to be one of Nintendo's biggest successes, as the console was advertised as fun for everyone. The main gimmick with the Wii was the controller itself, where the use of motion controls allowed anyone, not used to gaming, a new way to play. A game that came bundled with the system, Wii Sports, is one of the highest selling games of all time. Due to easy accessibility and fun gameplay, it made it enjoyable for anyone and everyone. Home run! During the Wii presentation, they introduced someone new, Reggie Fils-Aimé.
My name is Reggie. I'm about kicking ass, I'm about taking names, and we're about making games.
A man who broke every kid-friendly nature that Nintendo was known for at the time, as they tried to appeal to every type of gamer. This changed the perspective for Nintendo, appealing to a new crowd of people. This year also introduced Iwata Asks, which talked about the behind the scenes of the company and Iwata's design philosophies that introduced the world to who he was and what he was about. 2011 and 2012 were big years also for Nintendo, with the introduction of Nintendo Directs, the 3DS and the Wii U, though these don't make these two a good year for the company. As Nintendo Directs were first poorly received, but as time went on it became a big media event, which produced hype. And it's their main method for announcing games, even to this day. There was also a Nintendo 3DS, a new generation of DS console, where it could play games with the introduction of the 3D effect, which at first the consumers complained about motion sickness. Luckily it was an optional feature for the system, as they also sold a 2DS down the line for the people without 3D effect. However, as the console evolved through the years, the lineup helped the console sell as one of the highest selling portable consoles ever created. The Wii U, however, suffered from advertising and the namesake, as people believed the console to be an add-on for the Wii. What it was, however, was a hybrid which was similar to the DS. It had 2 screens, however was limited to a TV screen and a gamepad. It didn't sell, and the console suffered from a lack of advertising, and due to clarity and a good lineup of games, it meant the console ended up with poor sales. In 2015, Satoru Iwata passed away. He suffered from a tumor found in his bile duct. His legacy didn't end with him though. His philosophies are still a huge part of modern Nintendo, and his ideals are their ideals. The things he stood for, the company stood for, and he wouldn't be forgotten. This quote alone described the kind of person he was for the company, and the others around him.
On my business card, I am a corporate president. In my mind, I am a game developer. But in my heart, I am a gamer.
Finally, their most recent console, the Switch, which learned from the failure of the Wii U to create a system advertised towards everyone. It is a hybrid console that allows you to play home console games on a more powerful system portably compared to the Wii U, which was only played at home. This has allowed the console to soar, and in the 2 years it has been released, has already outsold the Wii U compared to the Wii U's lifetime sales.
I'd say I've had many pleasant experiences with Nintendo games in the past, in particular the Mario franchise. I think one of the first games I ever played was New Super Mario Bros. For DS. I remember fighting over it with my brother, who would get a turn on it, because it's just so new and unseen before, a game like that.
So one of my earliest memories with Nintendo would be the GameCube and just some of the games on there. As a console producer, they innovated controllers a lot over the years, which is sort of one of my favorite things about them. The whole style we have now and the whole layout we have in controllers is entirely because of Nintendo's, like the SNES controller, the whole 4-button layout, and just that. Oh. My favorite Nintendo game is probably Super Mario Bros. For the NES. I've speedrun that game a few times, and it's just running through that game as fast as possible is just an achievement of the internet at this point. It's got to be frame perfect on everything, and I really just love it for that open-endedness.
For the future, however, we do not know. Innovation is their top concern, and it allows for unique ideas in the modern gaming climate. And finally, as a wise man once said,
"The game is fun. If it's not fun, why bother?"